Hi, I'm Shannon Symonds. I'm the author of Safe House, and I thought it would be fun today to read from another location in the story. This is the bay. I'm kind of standing up over Astoria, Oregon. I don't know if you can see the ships. And I'll be reading from chapter 6. We're doing a chapter, a video. And then at the end, I'll chat a little bit about what inspired this chapter and some things that can maybe help you if you're a survivor or bishop or pastor or somebody working with survivors. And you can turn the video off long before I get there, so you don't have to listen to that. So I am up at a very beautiful place. I'll get a picture for you. I thought it'd be quiet, but Parks and Rec showed up to do maintenance, so we'll see. Last week you heard about Kelly and Emily. And you met Grace. Emily and Kelly are living in homes that are challenged with intimate partner violence, and Grace is the advocate that helps them, and Officer Joe Hart is her friend. So in this chapter, we're going to learn a little bit more about the advocate, Grace. Chapter 6, Mabel. Mabel, Grace's mom, woke to the sound of the alarm clock, reminding her she was in Grace's room. It was 5:30 in the morning. Slamming the snooze button, Mabel rolled on her back with her eyes closed. Mabel dreaded this time of day for many reasons. One reason involved cranky, sleepy, and opinionated teenagers coming together to argue about whose turn it was to pray. Then, one by one, they would remember they needed money or something important right that second. Mabel, barely 60, felt too young to be a grandma and too old to be a mother. I should be surfing, she thought, in Mexico. She never got to finish the thought. Something slapped her on the forehead. Wake up, it's the prayer fairy, time for family prayer. Cracking one eye open, she saw her 6-year-old granddaughter Mary in a red and white striped footy pajamas with a button flap bottom and a pair of cartoon underwear she had pulled over the top of them. A towel was tied around her neck, a blue feathered opera mask, and a magic wand completed the look. Mary smacked Mabel on the forehead again with her wand. Wake up, sleepyhead. Ouch, I'm up. She couldn't keep from grinning. Mary smiled back with a huge toothy grin that would shame the Cheshire cat, showing the hole where one tooth was missing. She was out of the room. High-pitched complaints came from her sister Esther's room. Mary, Esther yelled. A pillow made its way to the hall right before the fairy came out of Esther's room. Mabel sat up in time to see Mary cross the hall at a dead run back to Esther's room, landing on Esther's bed with both feet. The leg of the bed broke. The whole thing listed to one side, and the fairy never lost her footing as Esther chased her across the upstairs landing of the James home and into Grace's bedroom. The door hit the wall with a bang, and at the same time as the complaining began, Nana, Mary broke my bed. Prayer time, Mabel replied. Make her stop. The fairy was making her second run around the room when Mabel caught her and tucked her under her arm. Skinny striped legs and arms went limp as the fairy continued to giggle. Hauling her onto the landing, Mabel dumped her onto the old oriental rug at her 17-year-old son's Nephi's feet. Nephi pointed at Mary. You say the prayer. Not long after the prayer, Mabel made a to-do list and passed out various amounts of money and one check. Later, Mabel was back in bed, listening to the kids fight over the bathroom. Oh, how she wanted to go back to sleep. Just 10 minutes, Mabel thought as she dropped back off to sleep. Grace had encouraged Emily to go into a safe house or hotel, but Emily couldn't imagine taking her kids to a shelter or sleeping in a motel. So we're back with Grace. She just wanted her own bed and her own pillow. Grace dropped Emily at the neighbor's house so she could pick up her kids. So Emily could reach her, Grace gave her a business card with the 24-hour crisis line number and an invitation to call her anytime, day or night. An officer sat in a parked police car across the street. Grace waved at the dark figure as she left, and it waved back. Greta sounded, and back in Emily's house, Greta slept soundly, breathing softly, rhythmically. Both Emily and Amber tucked her tightly into bed and kissed her goodnight. Then Emily carried Bjorn into his room and laid him in his crib. Amber carefully pulled the blankets out from around him without waking him. Standing side by side, they watched his pursed lips suck on a dream bottle. Amber leaned over and kissed his forehead. Then they quietly backed out of the room, pulled the door almost closed, and looked through the opening of Bjorn's crib. Amber turned to her mother and whispered vehemently. "Look, Mom, I had to do it. I thought he'd kill you." Deflated, Emily's arms dropped to her side and she gingerly touched the stitches on her forehead as she turned. Walking softly to Amber's bedroom, she turned the light on. She put both hands on the end of Amber's bed and leaned forward with her eyes closed. Amber held her breath and waited. Without opening her eyes, Emily said flatly, "He loves you, Amber. He doesn't mean it. He's just a drunk. He can't help it." Amber had heard it all before, over and over again. Feeling guilty, she even believed some of it. He was a drunk. He did love them. And she loved him at some level. She was just sick of it. Since she'd been in high school, she'd realized that not everyone had parents that hit each other. There was an ache deep in her gut. Emily walked past Amber as if in a trance and disappeared like a shadow into her own room. Emily turned the light on and stood silently at the large window. Reflected in the glass, she saw the curve of stitches in her forehead and the emerging black eye. "I won't be going anywhere public for a while," she thought. Mechanically, she brushed her teeth, changed into a clean nightgown, and climbed into her empty bed alone. She reached over and hugged Burke's pillow, collapsing into sobs. She missed him. 3 minutes, and back to Grace's house. 3 minutes after Mabel closed her eyes, the front door closed loudly, waking her. She listened to Grace plod up the stairs. Jumping up, she straightened the bedspread when Grace came in. "Good grief, Mom, did you go back to bed? Did you?" She raised one eyebrow and looked at Mabel. Amazing, Mabel thought. How does she do that with one eyebrow? She tried to match the face. Grace didn't wait for the answer to her question. "I need a shower. I have to get ready for work." So we get to a little peek into their lives, Amazingly, really bad things happen to us, and then we, just like Emily and Amber, we get up and I watch survivors go to school, go to work, and nobody knows they were up all night and that they were at the hospital maybe all night. Many times I've been out with survivors, and I'll never forget one day we're talking and the kids run past us, and then I realize they're getting on the bus to go to school, and they've been up all night. And that was the first time that I got a release from her mom and helped her call the school counselor to let them know that the kids had had a rough night. So I thought it might be interesting to talk about why Grace does what she does and why police and other people do what they do to serve survivors and to help them and really care about them. And when I thought about that, I thought it's probably the same thing that inspires you. Why do you care about survivors? Why do you care about the people that you serve in your family, your kids, your neighbors, the people at church? Why are they important to you? Probably for the same reason. Many of the people that serve survivors become law enforcement officers, doctors, nurses, judges, have some history in their past, just like many of us do, of trauma, of intimate partner violence, or maybe sexual assault, or something that inspired them to want to change the world and make it a better place. And so because we have that history, just like you, when we reach out to help others, it becomes really important that we're aware of our own history. We're aware that we had an aunt and we watched some bad things happen. We're aware that our sister maybe was in a relationship. And all of that stuff is our personal baggage. But when we go to help our family members, our loved ones, or people in our church, it's really important that we pack our own personal baggage up and put it away and be very careful about the assumptions we might make. Your experience is going to be unique to you, and so is the survivors. Everything that happens to them is different than it is for anybody else. We all have agency and choice and accountability, and each life experience comes with a different set of outcomes, family, relatives, and resources. So, how do we pack our bags? Well, that is an ongoing question for therapy. But I also think that, the first step is to kind of know what to say. So somebody tells you, this really awful thing happened to me. What's the first thing that you can do? First of all, acknowledge your own baggage. Be careful not to open it up and start saying, well, this thing happened to me, and this is what I did, and this is how I thought, because, like I said, we're unique, and that's not helpful. So the second thing that you can do is, the most important thing, is listen. Ask good questions. I think one of the best things you can say to somebody like Emily, who has stitches, is, I am so glad you're alive. I am so glad you survived it. You know, we're here for you, and I don't have the answers for you, Emily. I don't know how to fix it, but I'm here to listen, and if I have a resource or if I can think of somebody that can support you, then I'll let you know. But let me know what you need. So if you're a pastor, you know, she may need resources. If you're a friend, she might just need a listening ear. No matter who you are, you can keep the number to the National Hotline in your purse or in your cell phone. Be really careful of handing survivors pieces of paper that say National Hotline and the phone number, because if they go home and the abuser goes through their purse and the abuser's aware that they may be ready to go. Instead, what I do is I give them a piece of paper that says Mary Kay or Avon. And then I put the number and I say, this is the number to the hotline. You can put this in your phone as the Avon lady or Mary Kay lady and use it. So the second thing you need to be aware of is that sometimes if you do have a history, a survivor starts talking and you get activated, you get kind of triggered with all of these feelings from your own experience, and you may have a really hard time being present. Be aware of, try to catch on that that's happening, and be very careful. I have survivors tell me over and over again the bizarre things that people will say to them because they're triggered and they're activated and they're afraid and they want to separate themselves from what they're hearing or from the violence. And so they might say something like, well, that happened to you because your spouse drinks, and my spouse doesn't drink, so that is not going to happen to me. I am good to go. But they don't say that. They say, well, if you could get your husband to stop drinking, everything would be okay. Or it awakens in us this very real possibility that, wow, there for the grace of God go I. That could have been me. And so we say things like, maybe you need to be a better wife. Well, I want you to know that the mark of true domestic violence, in my experience, is a clean house. It is a great wife. She is so put together. Sorry for the background noise. She's afraid not to be put together. She's afraid to have a dirty house. She's afraid not to please her partner. She's doing all kinds of things to keep the peace. And you're telling her she should lose weight or stop drinking or whatever is not helpful. And also understand that survivors cope in various ways. It may be that she's been completely sober all of her life and the drinking started because she can't figure out how to navigate what's happening to her, and it's a coping mechanism or a coping skill that she's picked up that works right now but isn't going to work for her forever. So the bottom line is, be really careful of victim blaming or telling them what to do, because chances are they're not going to come back to you or trust you again if you start off with a victim blaming statement like, well, you just need to stop drinking together. Secondly, be aware of your own history, your own baggage. Work to unpack it on your own time. Learn, study, get some therapy, get some help. Just be aware of it. Don't unpack it on the victim. They don't need to hear about all of that. What you can say is, I do understand. I have experienced some of that. And that's why I'm willing to be here for you. Don't put yourself in jeopardy. Don't pack somebody up and bring them home when the other person might be armed. These are the times that if you're not sure what to do, you call the hotline. If the survivor won't call, pick up the line, call, ask questions. Many churches have support systems for pastors, and you just might be the neighbor and you don't have that support system. The National Hotline will answer the phone, and it's okay to say, hey, this happened to my next door neighbor. What can I do? You know, and I think the most important thing is to listen, tell them you're glad they're alive, give them the numbers, and direct them to people who can help them. So thanks for listening. Till next time.